guys, Lori here. I'm here to do another Top 10 Tuesday from the Artsy Reader Girl. And this is the top book series that I don't think I'm going to finish right now. These are book series that I've read one book or two books of, and they just did not really impress me. So I really have no motivation to finish them right now. That does not mean that I won't be motivated in the future, but I'm just not motivated right now to finish them. And I'll give you guys my reasons in the comments or when I chat about it. But yeah, so let's get into it. The first series I'm going to talk about is not a big surprise to anybody, and that is the Glittering Court series by Michelle Mead. This is one of the series that I think I was the most disappointed by because I was super excited for it and it just did not live up to expectations. I really didn't like the book. I could not connect to the main character and I kept waiting for something supernatural to happen. I was intrigued by the other characters, but just not enough to continue reading. Now, at this point, the series is over, so I'm definitely excited to see what Michelle Mead works on in the future. I hope she divvies back into fantasy and paranormal worlds because I really love the world that she creates. Vampire Academy and Bloodlines was probably still to this day my top vampire series that I've ever read. So I hope she ventures back into that because I think she's a fantastic world builder. If you have not read Soundless, which was her standalone, I really, really enjoyed that book as well. But the series just did not do it for me and I just have no motivation to continue. This is also my full disclaimer. If these books are your absolute favorites or these series are your absolute favorites, that is awesome. I'm so happy for you. These books just did not connect to me. I'm sorry. But that is my, disclaimer. But let's continue. The next book I'm going to chat about is going to be a little bit controversial, and that's because technically it was a DNF, which I never do, and it was an audiobook that I DNF reading, and that is the Shatter Me series by Tahereh Mafi. There was two factors that went into this DNF and why I really am not interested in reading it at this moment. And the first one was that this was one of the first audiobooks that I started to read that I had not read before, so maybe my mind wasn't totally there. And also, I was in the middle of the Darkest Mind series by Alexandra Bracken, which basically has a very, very similar or the same premise, and I really just could not get past that. So I made it through 40% of the book, and I just was like, you know what, I'm not in the mood for this right now. But I know it's super popular, and I know that there's a big love triangle in it, so I'm just not that big into paranormal books, with a heavy, heavy love triangle. I might wind up reading it someday. I'm really interested in Tahereh Mafi's middle grade series and also her standalone contemporary that's coming out soon. So I want to read some stuff by Tahereh Mafi, just not this series. The next series is definitely going to be controversial. In my defense, I love Sarah J. Maas and I love her Thorn of Glass series. Definitely want to continue reading that. I'm a little bit behind on that, and I'm gonna be far behind on that. But the Court of Thorns and Roses is just a series that I did not really connect to when I read book one, so that's why it's on this list. Kind of going back to the whole love triangle thing, I don't adore book series that the love triangle is the major issue or it's the heart of it. Just don't. I'm just not that invested in it. It needs to have and I know her worlds are spectacular. Just not super interested in reading the series. I didn't love book one. I think I had a few more issues with it than other people did. But I don't know, maybe one day. Everyone that I follow on YouTube loves this series. They think it's great. Maybe I have to give it another chance. But I definitely want to focus on catching up on the Thorn of Glass series because I'm really, really far behind on that. But yeah, so right now, this is not a series I'm planning on continuing in the moment. If you have some reasons and you know my taste, why I should continue reading it, let me know in the comments and I will take your suggestions under advisement. But for right now, this is a series that I'm not planning on reading anytime soon or continuing anytime soon. The next series may not be super controversial, but for me, it was another series I was super excited for at the start of it, and that's the Red Queen series. I really loved book one. I thought book one was so unique and so different. And I read book two and I just had a hard time getting through it. I think it took me a really long time to read it and I just had no motivation to read King's Cage. And then I had no interest to catch up. I know this series has had a lot of conflicting opinions towards the latter half of it. But I'm curious to see what Victoria Aveyard works on next and see what her next path's gonna be. definitely be checking out her next series. The series just wasn't my thing. I might wind up rereading Glass Sword and see how I feel about it now, because it's been a while, but it just is not a series I'm planning on rereading anytime or continuing anytime soon. Definitely have her as one of my authors I will be considering checking out all her books in the future. This series just did not ultimately do it for me to continue reading. This next series, I'll be honest with you, it got spoiled for me when the sequel series came out, so I had no interest in reading it because the ship did not go my way. And that is the Selection series by Kira Cass. If you guys are longtime subscribers, you know love triangles never go my way. I'm always on the opposite side of a love triangle. Definitely felt the case in this book. I don't want to spoil it, so I won't tell you who she winds up with, but I was very, very unhappy when that was spoiled for me, so I really don't want to read the one, and I have no interest to read about America's Daughter in the future. But yeah, so just not a series I'm planning on reading anytime soon. That's my thoughts. Next couple of series are not really popular series, to be honest. They're just series that I like started and then just never wound up completing. One is the Strange Truth series by Maggie Thread. It was about like mysteries in a small town, and it just had a lot of like unnecessary sexual content and like a lot of sexual content that I was just not okay with, and I just was like, this book was just not my thing. I got, I think, at Barnes and Noble Fest like 2 to 3 years ago, and I read book one and I was like, no, 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 no. So I just hadn't, I know there are going to be other books in this series, but they just really never like caught my attention to continue. I thought book one was okay. I would give it like maybe like a 2 star, and I never give books that low, but just was not really my thing. So I really am not invested in to continue. Would be interested in hearing what the cases are, but if it's still very, very sexually explicit, it just may not be a series for me. Next series I would say is a little bit more popular, and that is the Under the Never Sky series by Veronica Ross. This is another series that's set in like a dystopian world, and I read book one and I didn't love it, and I just really was not motivated to continue, I guess you could say. But I do like the characters, and I really did like Roar and Liv, and I know that they become a little bit more instrumental in the series as it goes on. Again, I might one day read it. I definitely want to check out other books by Veronica Rossi, like books that are coming up to date. It's just really hard to go back and like binge a whole series when it's already out. So I just fell. A lot of these series I like fell on the bandwagon way too late, like Shadow and Storm and stuff like that. Just some series I just never wound up reading in like a timely fashion, so they just kind of fell by the wayside. This series is kind of like that. I just wasn't motivated enough to continue. So that's my thoughts on that. Series is a series that I bought book one. It's called the Lost Code series, and it's kind of like an Atlantis retelling. I enjoyed book one, but I read this book series so long ago. I know that I think there's like 4 books in it, and I just don't feel like rereading book one to continue. It was okay. It was right around my like end of high school, but I remember enjoying it, and then I just never wound up picking up book two. So the next series I'm going to chat about is the Women's Murder Club series. Around the time I went to college for the first time, I got on like a really big mystery kick. I read a lot of mysteries, a lot of murder mysteries, because I was a psych major. And I felt like they were easy to read, and I liked to look at the psychology behind them. And I just started this series, but it's really, really long, really time consuming. And the mysteries were super aggressive and bloody, and that's not normally what I like. But I did like it, and I definitely want to read more by James Patterson in the future. But this series just was, again, a series I started way too late to really become emotionally invested. The next book series I'm going to talk about is Until Friday Night series by Abby Glines. I talked about this series before, but it was like a contemporary romance series with a little bit of like what I would consider to be like a little bit of like an unhealthy relationship, and I just wasn't the biggest fan of it. I read book one, I was not thrilled by it. And I would much rather read series that have positive male and female relationships like Katie McGarry or Jennifer E. Smith or I was not the biggest fan of this. I'd be curious to eventually read the other books just to see if they're both all set with like a little bit of like a clingy guy and a girl who has no identity and stuff like that. It just wasn't my favorite book series, but those are all the book series that I'm not planning on continuing at the moment. Let me know in the comments if there's a series you think I'm absolutely need to give another chance to, and I will consider it, but I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.